Imagine this, a revolution in how we invest our money.
Well, if you do this and then you do this and then you do this, something magical can happen.
How a company called Sharesies shook up the financial world.
That change happened in only 5 years. It makes you think, well, what else is possible?
Kia ora, I'm Jahan Casanada, and welcome to Imagine This, a podcast about brilliant people who are doing awesome stuff right here in Wellington. My guest today is the co-founder of Sharesies. Her name is Sonya Williams. Hey, Sonya.
Kia ora.
You guys have had such a massive ride over the last 5 years, and I can't wait to hear all about it. Let's start by talking about investing. So when I was growing up, there was a message I heard over and over, which was buy a house, buy a house, buy a house. As soon as you have enough money for a deposit, that is how you save, that is how you invest, that is how you secure your future. Why are we so obsessed with houses in this country?
Yeah, that was definitely the same in my household too, actually. Investing and property were what went closer together. I think it's around the tangibility of it. Well, that's what we've found with our research. You know, we all need places to live and places to go, and I think that's been part of the Kiwi dream, is owning a home, getting on that property ladder and having your own slice of paradise.
We also know that Kiwis aren't great with money. We have high amounts of debt, we have low financial literacy. Why is that?
And that is a danger in itself, that stereotype that Kiwis are bad at saving and investing, and that's a little bit of a gripe I have, because I think the more you say it, the more people believe it, and That's actually one of the challenges that we've been trying to overcome with Sharesies, is saying you're not inherently bad at anything. All of these are completely possible, but it's around, have we had the education and the support? I always think, can you really be mad at people for not knowing something if you haven't taken the time to teach them? So I think it's around the level of transparency, around the level of support and services that have gone around those industries.
You're one of the 6 co-founders of Sharesies. What is Sharesies?
So Sharesies is a wealth development platform that makes it really accessible to invest. And our whole goal is that everyone deserves the opportunity to grow their wealth, and we want to create financial empowerment for all. How that manifests, so what is it? It's really a place where someone with $5 and $5 million have the same access to opportunities. And so you can start investing in, we've got over 8,000 investment options on the platform, and you can invest from 1 cent and really build your portfolio. It's all online, and you get the support you need to become an investor and really grow your wealth.
Did you know much about money when you were growing up?
I was taught really good money lessons, but I wasn't from a household that had a lot of money. My parents were from really, really huge families, and it was definitely, I was taught the value of a dollar, let's say that.
What did you see yourself doing as you grew up?
I was obsessed with music videos, and I wanted to direct music videos.
Wow. So a bit of a change with what you ended up doing, which was web design. And then you worked for some startups like Xero, mm-hmm. and you ended up at Kiwi Bank.
Mm-hmm.
So where did the idea for Sharesies come from?
I had built my technology career, but always been interested in finance. And it was only years later, looking back, that I kind of realised what that moment was. And I think it was when I was a student, I got stopped on the street by a TV news crew in my lunch break while I was working at a call centre, and they said, "Hey, can we just ask you a question?" And they said, "What do you think?" I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, cool." And they said, "Oh, what do you think of the recession?" And I answered, "What's a recession?" And they're like, "Cool, we've got it all, off you go now." And I was like, I wonder what that was about. Went and got my lunch. That night, my phone just blew up, and turns out I was used as it was this Vox Pops, which is voice of the population segment, to tell the story about why Kiwis know nothing about financial and economy and things like this. And I felt mortified. I was so embarrassed. And I think that feeling of not knowing stuff about money just really became a bit of a real vulnerability of mine. I was just I don't know about this thing. I need to learn about this thing. So I went and studied accounting, went into technology, and then just the seed of going, I want to work I think I need to be in financial institutions. I really want to help people use what I've learned in technology to create great experiences around finance, because this is such an area for all of us that we feel like we don't know enough about, but is so integral to our feeling of empowerment as people.
So when you watched that clip of yourself on the news, you must have felt disempowered.
Oh, I felt like a complete idiot. And everyone texts me being like, that's embarrassing.
But more than the embarrassment of having that moment on TV, it's at the core of that is this idea of you don't know, you don't understand, this is too big for you, this is too complex for you. And that's probably how a lot of people feel about finance, right? They don't have the power. The power is in the hands of the experts.
So the idea for Sharesies, working in a bank, working in Kiwi Bank, learning a lot about personal finance, and at the time the media was just filled with millennials not being able to buy houses because they spent all their money on smashed avocado on toast.
Supposedly.
Yeah, which is just such a lie. The reality is house prices were rising. We talked about it before, Kiwis, thinking that a lot of their wealth is in property and going, hey, this is getting further and further out of reach. What's the good news story here? And going, how can we create this opportunity that more people can get ahead? What does wealth look like if you're not investing in property? And that was really the idea. One night I was just at home with my partner going, should we go out for dinner now or not? And then in the moment going, I would love to just actually be able to invest this $50 that it would probably cost me to go out for dinner. Imagine if I could do it online in a really fun way. And from that moment, just got encouraged to take that to work and talk to some people that I knew about that knew a lot about investing, and they really took to it. And then next minute, there's kind of 6 people, all that have a love of technology, love of empowering people, all rallying around this idea that everyone deserves the opportunity to grow their wealth. That's like a core belief. And then how are we going to do this, and believing that we could, if we crack this, it could be really, really powerful, and wanting to use our time and our skills to make that happen.
What was the vibe like around that group of people back then?
I think it was we were all pretty wanting to do something. So we'd all come to this from different things and all really hungry to try something. And I think the vibe was, this sounds really hard, but it sounds really important. So it was a bit of a hey, should we, nodding around going, yeah, cool, let's give this a crack.
What was the original plan for Sharesies? What was the first thing that you did?
The first plan was, I would say, the difference between an idea and a great business is that other people think it's a great, other people have that problem and that need. And so we did 6 months of customer research, really just understanding people. So that was the first thing we did. And I think that's just so important, because it really helped us understand the need and what that need was. And it taught us and it inspired us actually that people want to be investors, and that most people, although money is a part of everyone's lives, most people have a really negative relationship with it. And how cool would that be if we flip that, and it could be empowering. And once you kind of are hearing those stories about how it's a part of everyone's lives, how it's used words like guilt and shame, you just want to solve that.
What was the mindset that you needed to cultivate within yourself in order to give this the best chance of succeeding?
There's that saying, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. And so I think, a lot of it is going, hey, look, I think this is worth it. I think we can do it. And connecting to that purpose and going, let's just give this a crack tomorrow, or the next moment. So definitely one around, I think resilience is a really big part of it, because not all moments are great, and sometimes you don't know where you're going to go next. But it's that idea of well, if I stay here, I'm only going to stay here. So I've got to keep moving in a direction, and that direction will unlock the next path and the next path and the next path.
Were there people who were cynical about this? Were there people who said there will be no demand for this?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And what did that feel like?
You just ask why, because, often when people have different points of view, it's you either know something that I want to know, or I know something that you don't know. And it's kind of about finding that middle ground. And we didn't kind of find any compelling reasons that made us that questioned that insight that we found, which is that people aren't doing something because it hasn't been designed for them in a way that connects with them. And the insight was that people would be investors if we created the experience that would help, that appealed to them.
So let's talk about the experience. What was the experience you wanted for your customers?
I think the word that popped into my mind just then was like hospitality. It's a real generosity of an experience, that one that puts you in the driver's seat. It's about empowerment. It's about you believing you can, and we believe that you can too. And then it's about going, cool, what's this experience feeling like for people? How do we make this really positive? How do we help people learn through the experience of actually doing something? How do we make this really accessible? How do we make people feel motivated and confident to be investors? So
how have you done that? Tell me about some of the unique features of what you offer your customers.
Yeah, so the key one really is around the financial accessibility. So you can invest in shares in New Zealand, Australia and the US, and a bunch of managed funds, and the minimum is 1 cent. So to contrast that, before starting Sharesies, the minimum buy-ins for some of these funds could have been $10,000 or even more into one investment. So being able to do something from 1 cent means that you can actually build a diversified portfolio with, a smaller amount of money. And diversification is like a really good part of building a portfolio. So instead of needing to save up heaps of money and then just put that on one investment because that was the minimum, you can actually bring in some of these really great investment habits into the way that the product has been designed. The other piece is really around the support that goes into helping people learn for themselves about investing. And so we have, we do on average about 3 blogs a week, breaking down a financial term or something that our investors are wanting to know about. We are connecting people with CEOs of companies that are listed. And that's really important because when you're investing in a company, you really want to know what they're up to. And so being able to have this access to these CEOs talking about their companies, getting up to ask them questions, that accessibility is really important too, to help investors go, yeah, cool, this sounds like a company that I want to be investing in.
Did you have to create a buzz around the product, or did that just happen through word of mouth?
I think a product is one thing, but I like to think of what we provide as a whole experience. And before we even had a product, we had 6,000 email addresses queued up that we could invite to use the product. And that was largely through understanding that people wanting to learn more about money and saying we could solve that in lots of different ways. And so we just started writing blogs about that. And that's how we ended up connecting with people. So money, people were interested to learn more and wanted to learn more, and we could actually help them before we even had a product to market. And that's what actually allowed us to really connect with people.
Tell me about the growth of the company over the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's grown a lot. So we're at almost 500,000 investors now, and that's across New Zealand and Australia. So we are in Australia as well, and they're from all different places around New Zealand. Our team has grown, so from a team of 6 to we're just shy of 200 people now. So yeah, huge growth, and lots of that actually happened over the last 2 years. So pre-COVID, the first lockdown in New Zealand, we had a team of about 38 people and 70,000 investors on the platform. And now, that has obviously grown a lot since then.
Growth is a good problem to have, but what are some of the challenges that has thrown up?
Yeah, people talk about growing pains of businesses, and definitely there is the growing pains of going from, people talk about them in these moments of 50 people and then 150 people, that everything of how you're operating will kind of just break down a little bit at those moments, and you'll need to create a new way of doing things. And definitely felt that at 50, where it goes from relationships being your processes to going, actually we can't rely on those. Not everyone knows each other here anymore, or not everyone knows each other to a point where we all understand what everyone's working on anymore. And so you need to set up and establish those processes. Some other challenges have been growing the team. We've got a fantastic team, and I think that is challenging in itself to attract such passionate and talented people, and to really find those amazing people and attract them to come and work with you on a problem that you care about and make that a problem that they care about too. So those have been some of the growing pains. Our Australia launch, so a lot of that happened during COVID, so we weren't able to get to Australia as much as we wanted to. And so that was challenging. You just kind of have to adapt to this new way of starting a business and going, okay, that's not how we would have done it. That's not how we wanted our Australia. We pictured ourselves going over there and, really being able to spend lots of time there. Well, I did personally. And I just haven't been able to get there. Two of our other co-founders moved there for a few months. But, it's not how you picture it, but it is saying, hey, well, we need, our ambition is to connect with Australians. They've got the same problems in this space. How are we going to overcome this new way of doing business?
There's almost a stereotype or an expectation that if you're creating a company, especially one that's experiencing such growth, you need to be throwing everything at the wall. You need to be working crazy hours and sacrificing your well-being because that's what the company needs. What are your thoughts on that, and what has your experience been like?
I don't think you can achieve those things without well-being. I definitely see well-being and growth together. We're asking people, and for us, we're creating something new, and that means that you need to be courageous and creative, and you can't think of yourself if you're not looking after yourself. There's no way that you're in a spot that you can be courageous and creative, and that's what we're really asking for from people. So huge fans of I don't think you can do that I don't think we can achieve growth without well-being.
When COVID hit last year, there must have been a huge amount of nerves about what was going to happen to the markets.
Yeah, when you're in the investing world, that's one of the things that you consider. What could this mean? And we did a lot of thinking about what the event of a market, a market crash or something like that, any movements in the market would have, and actually said, through that, we did a fun game scenario on it where we said, cool, a market crash is happening, what are we doing? And through that, we actually realised there was heaps of stuff that we could do now to prepare people. And so a lot about our experience and our education and how we encourage people to invest was in preparation, because markets go up and down. That's exactly how markets behave. And so it wasn't really a question of if, it was when, and then how we prepared to help our investors weather that storm. But didn't see it. I think the surprise was it going the other way, about people being so keen to invest and people, really the increase of demand on the platform.
Yeah, so some people might have expected you to lose customers at that point, but actually your growth went through the roof.
Yeah, we ended up needing to onboard new team members to help support with the demand, sending them laptops, through while being in lockdown, getting new people on board.
And why was that? Why was it that so many people flocked to Sharesies during the pandemic?
I think, I don't know if we'll know the correct answer, so it's all just a hypothesis, but I do think, if it had happened, so this happened 3 years into our business, and we'd been talking a lot and setting the scene and doing a lot of education around investing and how to be an investor. So I think the market was kind of primed, to, it wasn't like a, hey, we're launching today and you should invest. I think investing was something that was being talked about. It was already part of the culture happening in New Zealand. And I think at the time, the other phrase that was said to us was TINA, which is there is no alternative. So you've got people who can't buy houses, caring about their money, wanting to put their money to work, and how accessible investing had become, and saying, well, savings rates were really low. I think it was a bit of a blend of a lot of macro events going on at the time.
A lot of financial investment companies are in Auckland. What do you like about living and working in Wellington?
I think the connection, proximity, there you can say to someone, can you meet me for a coffee? And they will, because they'll probably work a few blocks away. I think the Sharesies team are pretty outdoorsy and ride bikes. Like a lot of us ride bikes to work. I think in a recent survey, only 3% of people drove to work from the whole team. And I think Wellington is great like that. Really good infrastructure. Personally, I love the connection to the outdoors, being able to go for a walk or a swim in the middle of the day. There's a lot going on.
How have you changed during this incredible journey you've had over the last 5 years?
I think it has helped in the self-belief category. Like I've always wanted to do something really impactful. And then I think more and more just going, oh, well, if you do this and then you do this and then you do this, something magical can happen. And so I think seeing that through my own experience has been really special, because that's something that, Sharesies in itself is about sharing self-belief, believing that you can live the life you choose, believing wanting money to just be something that enables you and your dreams rather than something you can't have or has to be shamed or it has to be controlled by someone else. And so I think seeing that change has been huge, and it's a huge confidence boost. But I think as well, it makes you think, well, what else is possible? And because this was an idea or something that resonated with us, but there'll be people out there with ideas that resonate with them, problems that resonate with them. And it's just that thing of going, well, if you just do something about it, something can happen.
What holds us back in New Zealand?
I think, people will talk about the typical things like the tall poppy and things like that. And I was reflecting on being called a try-hard at school, and that used to be quite a big deal. That was quite a negative thing.
Did people call you a try-hard?
Or just anyone that was doing anything, you'd be like, oh, you try hard.
Yeah.
And I reflected on that as a grown-up. Recently, I was like, realised that I was worried that people were going to call me a try-hard. And then I was like, actually, yeah, I am a try-hard. And that's actually really cool.
Something to be proud of.
Yeah, it's like people are trying hard. And I think that's something we see shift now. I see that with my nieces and nephews. People seem far more encouraging, I hope that the tall poppy piece is getting capped a bit, that we should celebrate people who are giving something a try. But I think otherwise, maybe the seeing people who have done it before, it didn't occur to me until I worked at Xero that you could have a global business based from Wellington. That was my first exposure to it, and seeing that and going, well, that just lifts the new ambition of what you think you can do.
What's your advice to someone who has an idea and isn't quite sure whether to put it into action or how to put it into action?
Give it a crack. And I think, there's a nice kind of phrase which I think is build it like you're right, test it like you're wrong. Don't, you've got this wonderful idea. If and if it's filling your boots, why is it doing that? Why are you wanting to go on with it? And then get curious, get really, really curious. Almost say, what could go wrong with this? What needs to go right? What's my riskiest assumption here? Because as I said before, it's not all great ideas turn into great businesses. And it's about going, where's that moment, and finding that moment. And the more and more you push that and do something every day towards that, then all of a sudden it creates momentum. And I think other people, if you can convince other people to be in the team, that's a huge momentum shift, because it goes from just being you. I know, people often talked about the six of us being like whack-a-mole, if one of it, because it's very rare that six of us would bed down on the same day. But it's typically if someone's like, oh no, this isn't going so well, someone else would be like, oh no, this is going really well. And you balance out. So I do think teamwork, and that's a huge part of what we do in the culture, but other people and getting people on board is huge.
You're obviously a creative person, and you've taken an idea and you've made it work as a business. But at the heart of that is the idea. How do we foster our imaginations?
Yeah, I think that, taking time to recognise and really follow through on a thought. So often when you think of doing something, you can think of all the reasons it won't work. And I think if you're going to spend all the energy in why something won't work, at least spend time imagining how great it could be if it did. What could that look like? Really put yourself there. And I think because there will always be barriers, and it's about if it's meant to be, if that imagination or that vision for what you're trying to create is big enough, you will overcome the barriers that are in that way. So I think people often, skip on the imagination step. So I think, sit down, take a few deep breaths and just put yourself in that future space and say, what would the world actually look like? And for us, when we first started, it was like, imagine a world where people were walking around buying and selling portfolios while eating their smashed avocado on toast, And someone said to me the other day, they're like, that's happening now, Sonya. And you think that change happened in only 5 years. And so I think imagining it and then going, wow, that can actually happen.
Awesome. And that's a perfect place to end our conversation. Sonya, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having
me. Imagine This is brought to you by Wellington NZ. Check out more episodes right here or wherever good podcasts are found. See you next time.